Today's daf is daf mem in קידושין. We passed the halfway point in Shas. We learned for Loza ben Ruma and Yosef ben Chaim Michal, and we're at the fourth of the wide lines on Mem Amud Aleph. Ramile Rava Rav Nachman. Rava posed the following question from Nachman. Tonight our Mishnah said, not our Mishnah Peah said, Elu Dvarim Shalom Oseo Son. That you do them now in this world. You eat the fruits, meaning the profits you eat in this world. Karen, the principle comes from. These are special mitzvahs that you do them, you perform them, you get the profits in this world, but the principle stays for you in the next world. Elim, what are they? Keep it up aim. Acts of kindness, bringing peace between two people. The Talmud Torah connected kulam. Talmud Torah is the equivalent of all of them. How do we see this? That you have a share in this world and in the next world. This is not like Rav Yaakov, who said yesterday. Rav Yaakov said that there's no schar mitzvahs v'hai alma leka. He disagrees with this concept that there's a schar both in this world and the next world. He says it's only in the next world. So how do we see this in the psukim that you get a share in this world and next world? The kibbutz and it says l'man yarichum yamecha. Rashi explains that yarichum yamecha means l'olam haba. L'man yitavlach, be good for you. That's in this world. Man yitavlach means in this world, while you're alive. In the next world, here, it says, if you pursue charity and kindness, you'll find life. That means olam haba. And stuck of a chabod, you'll find stuck of a chabod. That's in this world. You'll get charity and honor. It says, seek peace and pursue it. Amarvu asur difa l'gzeir shava between bakashom and feyu and rodav tzaka v'chesed. It says rodav tzaka v'chesed zivacha bakashom and feyu. When it comes to chesed, it says when it comes to seeking peace between people, it says bakashom v'feyu, pursue it. Ksiv hasam rodav tzaka v'chesed, and it says rodav chesed. What does it say? What's the reward for rodav tzaka v'chesed? Yim tzachayim tzaka v'chavod. So we relate bakashom to Gemilas Chesed, so you also have a share in this world and next world. Talmud Torah says, Kihu chayecha, this is your life. That means Ba'olam hazeh v'chayecha, Ba'orech yamecha, the length of days we said that'll be in Olam Haba, which is endless. Orech yamecha Olam Haba. Notice it's always a lotion of Olam Haba. Yesterday we had Rav Yaakov who said, we talked about Tchias Hamesim, and Rashi referred both to Tchias Hamesim and Olam Haba. Sometimes the two things are used interchangeably. In any case, so it says in all these cases that you will have life in this world and the next. Why isn't that mentioned? It says when you send away the mother of the birds and take the birds or the chicks for yourself, it says it'll be good for you. And harachas yamim sounds like what? Like olam haba. Good in this world, go to the next world. So let's know why isn't Shiur mentioned in the items that are mentioned? These are the things that you get both the profits in this world and the principal states in the next world. Why is not Shiur also mentioned? So the Gemara's answer is ton of a shire. It wasn't all inclusive. He left out some. So usually the Gemara says my shire, the high shire. What else did you leave out? If you left out one thing, it's usually meant as an exclusion. But here the Gemara is even stronger. It says Tani Tana Elu Dvarim. The Tana says these are the things. Mashma these no others. Ton of a shire says these are the things. It's listing them all. Amar Rava, Rava said, Rav Idi asked, Rav Idi explained it to me as follows. Pasuk says, Imut tzaddik hito, say of the tzaddik that he is good. Kipir malei mechel, he will eat the fruits of his labor. V'yesh tzaddik tov, v'yesh tzaddik shein. What do you mean? If he's a tzaddik, what do you say? Say the tzaddik, he's good. Sounds like there's a good tzaddik and a bad tzaddik. Is there a tzaddik who's good and tzaddik is not good? If he's a tzaddik, everything should be good. Ella, if he's good both for heaven and for people on this earth, if he's good for heaven, but Ra here does not mean that he's bad, but it means that he's not doing something that's particularly good for humanity. So for humanity, that's called tzaddik she'enoto. Doesn't mean that he's bad. It just means that if he does something that's good for humanity and for God, that's a tzaddik tov. Tov l'shemayim v'ral b'riyah said tzaddik she'enoto. He's not doing something that's good for humanity. And sending away the bird doesn't do anything for humanity. When it comes to making peace and honoring your parents and doing those good things of seeking peace, chesed for people, doing kind acts, all those things are good for humanity. Whereas the sending away the bird, it's God's will, but it's not doing anything for humanity. That's why the mission is only talking about things that are good for humans, humanity, and good for God. He said the same thing for evil. Woe unto the evildoer. He will be repaid in kind for what he's done. He will be repaid for what he's done. It says like for a bad Russia. There's a good Russia and a bad Russia. What does that mean? If he's bad to God and bad for humanity, that's a Russia Ra. Maybe he doesn't observe the mitzvahs. He eats non-kosher. If he's for example, he's non-kosher, commits adultery, doesn't observe the holidays. So he's got bad to God, but he's not bad to Brias. Rashi says, for example, a murderer or a ganef, something like that, is bad to God and bad to humans. Merits have principle, as we saw in those 4 cases. And that's prophets. It says that he will eat the fruits of his labor. That means that the fruits he gets now, the principle stays for later on. Aveira, but if he does an Aveira, he has no profits, meaning he just gets punished for the Aveira. He doesn't get more than that. Schus has more because you get profits from it in this world. Aveira, God just punishes you for that and no more. Right? It says, what is saying that pasuk? It doesn't say pre, it says whatever he did, he'll be repaid in kind, but not more than that. When it comes to a tzaddik, it says he will eat the fruits also. Not only the principle he will get, but he'll also get the fruits, the profits. What about the pasuk that says they will eat from the fruits of their ways, from their bad counsels, they will be satiated. If an Aveira has Paris, what do we mean by that? An Aveira that has Paris, like, for example, Rashi says, Chil Hashem. When an important person, a respected person, does an Aveira and other people learn from that, that's an Aveira that has Paros, because it causes other people to sin. So that's what we mean when he says he will eat the fruits, meaning the fruits. If you just sin quietly, that's one thing, God will punish you. But if you sin in a public way, in a way that will cause others to sin by causing Chil Hashem, like an important person, let's say, who doesn't eat kosher, or doesn't keep Shabbos, or doesn't learn Torah, or acts in a disrespectful way, and he causes others to follow him that way, that's an Aveira that has Paris, because it's causing others to sin also. And if it doesn't have Paris, it doesn't have any fruits. In other words, if the Aveira is limited to the person himself, then he's only going to be paid in kind, no more than that. If a person has a good intention, even if he didn't do the Maisa yet, God will reward him for it. Those who fear God will speak. They'll speak to one another. Actually, Hashem will hearken and listen. Because of safe as Zikar in the front of the written in a book of remembrance in front of him. Those who think about him, who they just mentally they think about him. What does it mean? Those who think about him. Even if you just thought about doing a mitzvah, bananas, and then something beyond your control prevented you from doing the mitzvah, if you thought about doing a good deed and you were prevented from doing it from something beyond your ability, some outside factors preventing you from doing the mitzvah, you still get credit for it. But if you have a bad intention, Hashem does not count that. If I've seen a sin in my heart, if in my heart that there's been sin, Hashem will not listen. Maybe what about it says, I will bring to the nation evil fruits of their thoughts. That means that the thoughts alone can cause punishment. It says, if a machshava has a pri, as we said before, machshava she'osa pri, for example, he fulfilled the machshava. If he had a bad machshava and then he followed up and he actually did that maisa, then Hashem counts the machshava also as part of it, not just the sin, but the machshava preceding it as part of it. So machshava she'osa pri, Hashem counts the deed as well as the thought, as the planning of it. Machshava she'ein ba pri, machshava that had no there was no fulfillment of the deed, and Kadosh Baruch Hu Hashem does not count that. So what about the pasuk that says we had this yesterday? The man supposed to space Rabbalibam. Hashem will grab them in their hearts, and just for something that they thought about, Hashem will punish them. That's speaking my avodah zarah. The Amar chamur idolatry is so stringent. Whoever denies idolatry, it's as if he admits to the whole Torah, and the reverse is true. If he goes to avodah zarah, he denies the whole Torah. So avodah zarah, Hashem does count the thought alone. But other sins, only if he actually follows up and does the sin, does Hashem add on the thought itself to the ledger for which he will be punished for the sin. Ula Amar Karafuna. Ula explains it this way. Ula says that this is what it says Primach Shabosam, that they will the fruits of their thought Hashem will punish them for. He's speaking about a different case. Ula Amar Karafuna. Amar Karafuna was Kim Shavar Shanaba. If a person is a repeat offender, he keeps doing the same avera, hutralo. It's mutter for him. It's not mutter. Elanas look a heter. In other words, once a person feels that he doesn't keep kosher, he doesn't keep Shabbos, doesn't keep things anymore, so it's mutter for him. So then, even if he doesn't actually commit another, he eats treif every day. Even if he didn't eat treif today, it's not because he didn't want to eat treif. It's simply because he didn't have the opportunity. Then Hashem counts that as a vaisa because we're talking about a repeat offender. Says Rashi, he's not. If he's thinking about eating a ham sandwich and they didn't have an opportunity, it's not because he did tshuva, but they just didn't have it. He didn't have the ability to. He didn't have a sandwich in front of him, whatever. But that's what we're speaking about over here. Then Hashem does count his thoughts. So there are exceptions, even though normally Hashem only counts the sin itself, not the thought about it. But if the thought, as we said, led to a maisa, or the thought was with a repeat offender, or the thought was avodah zarah, then Hashem does count that against the person. Amar Ravu, we're at the first of the wide lines on the page. Amar Ravu, a person is better off doing a sin in a hidden way, quietly, when nobody sees. But don't Hashem. Don't be mechalit the farhesia in public. Go worship your own idols. Right, and afterwards it says, if you don't listen to me, don't profane my name. In other words, do it quietly. If a person is going to sin, better that he should do it privately rather than publicly. Amar V'loi is talking. A famous line. If a person saw that he can't control himself, he has a terrible yetzer to do avodah zarah. Pardon?
No, I'm just reading the words. Sorry.
He saw that his inclination is overpowering him. He can't control himself. He can't resist it. So he should go to another place where people don't recognize him. Dress himself in black, like in mourning. Rashi says maybe that will soften his heart when he sees that he's dressed in a terribly disrespectful way. So you ask him, he shouldn't see himself dressed nice. He should dress in terrible clothes. Cover himself with black. But let him do what he wants. Let him do it. It's not that it's mutter to do what he wants, right? Not mutter to him. But Rabbi said that maybe these things will break his yetzer hara and will prevent him from doing the avera. That's what he means. Let him do what he wants. Maybe the black will prevent him. It doesn't mean that he should do the avera. We're not allowing it. It's just saying better do that.
The next lines assume that you are allowing it.
Right. Okay. So Aini Batanya Koshal Chas al Kvodo al Kvod Koda. If you don't have Rahmanas on the honor of God, Roylo Shalom, it's better that he shouldn't have come to the world. Mahi, what is that? Rambam was talking because if you look at a rainbow, because it's like God's presence. You shouldn't. It's disrespectful to stare at the everybody. So Rambam said over Aveira B'Seiser. That's committing an Aveira secretly in private. So you see that it's not a good idea. Why are you telling me this? If he could resist this temptation, that's what he should do. If he could resist it and he didn't, then that's a terrible thing. It's better that he shouldn't have come to the world. But if he can't resist this temptation and he has no choice, he's going to do it anyway. Then he has no. If he can't resist, then he should go to a place where they don't recognize him and not Mechal Hashem Hashem. we don't give credit when it comes to Chil Hashem. What does that mean? Whether he did it without intention, unintentionally, or b'meizah, or intentionally, we don't give him credit. What do we mean? That might even a chanbani, you go into a store, they're shown right here. They all write it down. They write it down. You keep a tab, and then you pay it after some period of time has passed. You want to pay the tab. Keep a running tab. That's what chanbani does. Not so with people who commit Chil Hashem. Hashem pays it back right away. We don't give them credit and gather up all the sins together, but rather we pay him back right away. Means this. Means that if his sins were equal, he had equal amount of sins and equal amount of merits, and one of the demerits is Chil Hashem, just like we saw the other day, that if you did something good, Hashem, if you're even Stephen, Hashem tips the scale in your favor. Here, if one of the averos was Chil Hashem, that tips the scales against you. Rashi's going to say, says Rashi. In other words, you don't compare them. You want to compare them. He says, you know what? We don't compare. If you had 50% averos and 50% mitzvahs, you're 50-50. But if one of the averos was Chil Hashem, we don't consider that equal to a mitzvah. It's rather greater than a mitzvah, and that tips the scales against you. Yeah, because that represents Hashem's name. I thought of Keshet as possibly referring to a person's aver. In some places, it shows just that.
Because it doesn't say north, and then you're going to see the Keshet.
Yes, but I guess it means not to glare at it. I guess it means not to glare if it means rainbow, if it indeed means rainbow. This is a famous line. Of course, this is exactly fitting for this time of years. We're about to have Yom Kippur. That, as we say during a Aseret Simei Tshuva, you should always see yourself this way. So literally, the Gemara is right in the right spot. A person should always present to himself, see himself. We can't keep track of who has more mitzvahs, more averos. We hope things are good, right? But a person should always appear to himself as if he's 50-50. He's 50% guilty, and 50% innocent or meritorious. Also, if he does one mitzvah, Ashrav, he's happy. He's made himself shechriyat smol. Now the scale has been tipped in his favor. Other averos, if he did one more avera, oilo won't him shechriyat smol kafchova. Shneimar b'chote echad, one sin yavid tova will lose a lot of good. Because of one sin alone, shechata even man lost a lot of good. The Lezer of Shimon says, not only should he appear himself this way for himself, but he should consider the whole world. Not only is a person judged individually on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, but also the whole world is judged. The Lezer says, "Pisha olam nidin acharuba," goes according to the majority. By yochid nidin acharuba is also, in other words, the majority of good deeds in the world, majority of good deeds of the person. Also, mitzvah achas ashrab. He did one mitzvah. He should see himself as 50-50. In other words, it makes a big difference in life. If if you have to lose 30 pounds, it's pretty hard to start. But if you have to lose 3 ounces, you'll manage that just a little bit. So if you know that you're 50-50, so okay, I won't speak Lashon Hara today. I want to be good because I'm at the finish line. I'm just about to tip the scales in my favor, right? It's not like we have a long way to go and we'll never finish. It's a simple thing. Just don't do any more averos right now, and you'll tip the scales. The same not only for yourself but for the whole world. Everybody's the whole world and the individual is judged according to if he's mostly meritorious or not. Also, one mitzvah ashra, he's happy. Not only is he tipped the scales for himself, but for the whole world. The same plus we had before. Says there, because of one sin, she also said because of one sin that this guy did, Avid Menu, he's lost all the good. When we call Ola from himself and from the world, a lot of good. Even a person was a tzaddik, a complete tzaddik in all his days. At the end, he rebelled against God. Even as Rishonis, he's lost the good deeds that he did. He lost everything by rebelling against Shneimar. Sitkos tzaddik lo tatzenu b'yom pasho. The tzedakah of the righteousness of the righteous person will not save him on the day that he sins. Gemara is going to ask about this in a second. If he was Russia Gomer, the other way is also if he was Russia Gomer, he was a terrible Russia all his days. Vasa tshuva achari did tshuva at the end. Ein maskin lo shuv risha. We don't remind him of his risha. Shnemar risha sarasha lo yikashu ba lo yishva b'yom shuva merisha. The day that he returns from his evil and he does tshuva, we won't mention it anymore. It won't make him stumble. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, but a tzaddik who was a tzaddik his whole life, and only at the end he rebelled, he loses everything. Then at least that okay, he sinned at the end, but for the time that he was good, he should get schar for that. He regrets the good stuff that he did. In other words, if he just did good and he did bad, okay. So he says here he fell, but he still believes in God and in the mitzvahs, and he wanted to do well, but at the end he didn't do so well. But if he regrets the good that he did, then he loses everything. If a person is involved in learning Chumash, learning Torah, over Mishnah, that's Gemara in the Torah Shabbat, over Derech Eretz and the way of the land, which usually means working or being good to other people. Love Meheru, they will not sin quickly. Shnema Bachut Mashal Shabi is all these three legs, both Torah, Torah Shabbat, and Derech Eretz, the threefold cord, will not rip, will not tear easily. If he doesn't have any of these, doesn't learn Chumash, doesn't learn Gemara, and he's not with the way of the world, he doesn't contribute to society, enemy issue, he's not part of society, and this is a terrible thing. Amar Rav Elazar Rav Tzadok, Lama Tzadikim Nimsham Lama Tzadikim Nimsham. What is an example of tzadikim who suffer in this world? Le'ilan Shekulo Omed B'Makom Tara, like a tree who's totally standing. The tree itself, the main part of the tree, is standing in a pure place. But its branches reach over into a place of tumah, meaning this world, our world, is a place of tumah. Nixus nofo, if the branches are cut off, kulo omed makom tara, now the whole tree is standing in a makom tara, meaning the tree is ready for olam haba. In this world, the branches that he have are cut off, meaning he's given his payment in this world for some good, and now he's totally standing in Torah for the next world. Maybe God brings pain and troubles to the tzaddikim that they will inherit the next world. Your beginning will be small, but at the end you will reach a lot. You will gain a lot. What are Risham compared to in this world? The whole tree stands in Tumah, but its branches reach into Makom Tara. You cut off the Tara part, meaning the good that he's done, you're going to pay him back for that in this world. Then what's remaining stays in Makom Tumah, and that's going to be his lot in the next world. Hashem rains down on them good in this world in order to banish them and to consign them to the lowest level in the next world. Shnemar yesh derech yashar, the finish looks like a good road. This guy feels he's doing good. He goes to Vegas, everything is he's successful. But at the end, it's the path of death. They were sitting, Tarfon and the other elders were sitting in the upper chamber of Nitzah, that was his name, the house of Nitzah, Belud, in the city of Lud. This question was raised before them. Talmud Gadol or Maisa Gadol? What's better, to learn or to do Masim? Then Rav Tarfon Amar Maisa Gadol said, Maisa is better to do a Maisa, better to do good deeds than to learn Torah. Then Rav Akiva said, Talmud Gadol, learning is greater. Nenu Kulam, that they all responded, they all agreed with Rav Akiva. Talmud Gadol, Talmud maybe de Maisa, because learning brings in Maisa. If you learn Torah, you'll know what to do. Tanya Rav Yossi Amar Gadol, Talmud, learning Torah is greater than Maisim. When did they get the Torah? As soon as they left Mitzrayim, right? As soon as they left Mitzrayim. When did they have the mitzvah of Chala? The Vawachem Ela Aretz. When they came into the land, they had the mitzvah of Chala. So that was 40 years later. So they got the Torah before the mitzvah of Chala. So yeah, Talmud Baby said, Gadol Talmud Shekol Mechala Bar Mishana. The Tumas Ramais is Chamishim Bar Mishana. Chamishim Bar, why? Because Tumas Ramais were only chayiv after they conquered the land in over 70 years, and then the next 7 years they distributed the land. That's Kibush and Chalukah. That's 40. So that's 40 years after Sinai, plus 14, right? The 14 years when they entered the land and conquered the land and distributed it. That's a total of 54. L'shmitas shishmachos. When was the first shmita? After 14 years, they started counting shmita. So that was the 7th year after 54. That would be 61 years. 61 years since Har Sinai. Yovlos may have a sholish, but Yovel it's 103. Why? Because when they started counting Shemitah, they started counting Yovel. So 54 and 49 is 103. So that's 103. So that would be if it may have a sholish. Says Gemara, may have a sholish. Why is it 103? May have a Arban. It's 50 years later. Yovel is the 50th year. It should be the 104th year. The Torah preceded Yovel by 104 years because it's 54 and 50 is 104. So Yovel mitchilasahu mishamed. Not like Shemitah, which is Meshamed at the end of the year, Miketz Shevasham Tas Shemitah, that like your loans, etc., at the end of the 7th year. But when are the slaves freed? On Yom Kippur of the first year of the beginning of the Yovel year. So it's really 103 years, the beginning of the 104th year. Just like learning Torah came before Maaseh, because again, they didn't have Challah for 40 years. They didn't have Shemas Maisus for 54 years. They didn't have Shemitah for 61 years. They didn't have Yovel for 104 years or 103 years. So just like Kilamaisa, Kachdino Kilamaisa, you'll be judged for not learning before being judged for your Masim. When a person is judged, he's judged for learning. Why didn't you come to learn? There was a shiur in the morning. You can come every day. It doesn't conflict with your work, right? That's what he's judged for. Shneimar, Poter Mayim, Rashi says, and Poter Mayim is Aporik Old Torah. Mayim, the Torah is compared to water. So if you remove the Torah from you, Rashis Mud is the beginning of your judgment. Even though Tosas points out that don't we always say that the person's judged for is Nasata, Nasata Be'amuna, right? Did you deal honestly with your friends? Doesn't mean that's the first question. It just means when he's asked about that question, the question is, did you deal honestly? That's the question. Did you deal honestly in business or in your trade with other people? But the first thing he's judged for is, why didn't you learn Torah? Just like he's judged on Torah before he's judged for his deeds, his reward is given schar for learning Torah is given before the schar for Kedushin. He gave them the land of the nations, and the toil of the nations they inherited. Yishmeru means over here, because of learning the statutes of God, the Torah Yinsoru, and they observed this Torah. In other words, that's the first thing that Hashem grants them. Hashem grants them schar for Torah before Maasim.
It's interesting they don't give every Tarfon opportunity to explain himself.
Yeah. Maybe he meant the same thing, but that's how they came out with it at the end. Nimnu v'gomer, they took a vote. If he doesn't have any of these, doesn't mean it didn't have all three. If you don't have any of them, if you don't have Mikra, you don't have Chumash, you don't have Torah, Torah Shabbat Peh, or Derech Eretz, Edom Eish, or Yochanan Pasleitis. He can't give testimony either. If he's not learned, and he doesn't contribute to society anyway, he's just hanging out. He's Pasleitis. Rashi says the Kivin She'enim and Yishuv, since he's not part of society, Ein Makras, he's not this. He has no self-respect. Ein Lo Boshes Panim, he's not shamed at all. And the Gemara is going to give an example. If a person eats in the shuk when it wasn't the custom to eat in the shuk. That's also he's not makronos covered. It's considered disrespectful. So he can't give edus because he doesn't care about lying. He has no self-respect. He could lie easily. If you eat in the marketplace, I raise a doma l'kelef, like a dog. If you eat in the shuk, you're like a dog, meaning you have no self-respect. He's considered disrespectful to eat in the shuk. Some say he's also pasulatus because again he has no self-respect. He might lie. Amar of Idi Barab halacha ki yeshom. Halacha is like the yeshomim that he's pasulatus as well. Dorish bar kafara. First, said another interesting halacha about people who don't contribute to Ragzan, a person who is bad-tempered, will also be the only thing he gains by his bad temper is the ill effects of the bad temper. In other words, when a person screams and gets angry all the time, he's only hurting himself because, as doctors will tell you, that the anger and the all the results of the anger just weaken himself. All he does is hurting himself. He's not hurting the other person. And for a good person, we give him the taste of the fruits of his actions. That's what we do. This is all part of what Bar Kapara said. Ragzan loss of Yadol exists, all you gain. A good person, he gets the fruits of his actions. If, like we said in the Mishnah, if he doesn't learn Chumash or Gemara, doesn't learn Torah except Torah Pet, and he doesn't contribute anything to society. Dor hanamimenu. Make sure you vow having any pleasure from him, meaning have nothing to do with him. Shneimar of Moshe Bleitzim lo yashav. He didn't. He sat, and it didn't sit in a place where scoffers sit. Moshe Bleitzim. What does a guy do if he doesn't learn anything and he doesn't work, he doesn't contribute anything to society? Then what does he do? He's simply Moshe Bleitzim. He's simply at a sitting around scoffing and doesn't contribute anything. And you should make sure you have nothing to do with him, and you should make an edit not to have any enough of him. This is the end of the first parak, long parak of קידושין. Tomorrow's daf Shabbos is the first daf of Eish Mekadesh, Bo Shlucho, and on Sunday at 5:10 we'll pick it up from about Haimi Boile, about 10 lines down on the page on Mem Beis. Tomorrow the podcast will take you till about that spot. Haimi Boile, those words in the middle, about 10 lines down, 10, 11 lines down on Mem Beis of Alpha. We'll pick it up from there at 5:10 on Sunday. That would be 10:10 in New York. And after Yom Kippur, we'll go back to our regular schedule of 5:20.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay. Have a good Shabbos. Kol tov.
Shabbos recording.